Now this is an engineered fireplace. And Bob brought this out, and this is a unique saw, a 45E. I've never seen one before. It's a nice looking saw right there. I kind of like the aluminum look right here on the side cover. That looks cool.
That's from our friend Eric up in Vermont.
He was saying this was a pro level saw in his time, and it's a solid looking little saw right there, you know. Magnesium cases. This is metal as well. It's got anti-vibe on it, and dare I say it, maybe I better not, but the controls almost are reminiscent of the Homelight, where you have the throttle lock right here on the handle, choke over here, switch. The thing I got a kick out of is this cover right here over the spark plug wire to make sure you don't have a shocking experience. Very cool.
Get a shot of our operation here. Now, one of these times, I saw in one of the earlier videos, I think it might have been that first day in the woods video in the snow.
Yeah.
Where John Clark said, "You guys need grits. There's the biscuits are almost done." Right? And he's right, you know, because I make grits a lot at home.
Yeah.
Breakfast, and,
I didn't know that.
That suggestion, we're gonna make some grits outside here. Because he's right. It's like a simple and
I see Bob's got bit by the battery bug too. But that's a pro saw right there. So this ash tree right here is Bob's surgical moment. And we got this Widowmaker right here where it's broke right about where I'm pointing. And it's leaning into the ash, but it's also leaning into this tree. So, well, I didn't get it on camera, but he cut right there and it folded back and pulled the base of the branch back to where you see it there, and it came straight down. So it ended up being a safe operation. And this is the next one right here, and Bob's going to take that down. There it is.
I was aiming for that little tree, so it wasn't far off.
Yeah, it looks like you got exactly what you're looking for.
I'm gonna get my 90, pretty much. It wasn't level, it was tilted a little bit. But on a scale of 1 to 10 with this stuff, I only give myself a 5.
It's on the ground and you're safe. What else do you want?
we never talk about carburetors, right? But this thing, like you said last week, this is idle perfect all day.
Yeah.
And like you set it down, is it going to stall or is it going to stumble when you hit the trigger?
See, I don't want none of that.
Yeah, and it's like it's like the carburetor is what's perfect about this today. I mean, I know it's ugly and all, but well, I'll do this. You can do the stump, and that's it for this. Do you think, is it raining too much to do the thing outside or not?
It's borderline. Because it'll happen as we'll get to the top of the camera.
Why? I'm worried about that. Yeah, not the saws. So we'll wait till we're done. We'll make a call in.
All right, let me see if I can get this stuff out of here. That's a good test for that piece of crap, right?
It passed. Passed very well.
All right.
Let me take my earplugs out so I'll stop shouting at you.
All right. So one of the things we wanted to do was a kind of a redo on the 372 saw college, and we got rained out. It's raining outside. We did a little bit of work this morning. We were going to do more. And so instead of a fireside chat, we have the table side chat. Yeah, there's a couple of concepts. So I'm going to request. I'm not sure. Bob does what the heck he wants. But one of the things is the discussion of just what a good running saw is. And the reason why it came to mind was we went out there. We both did some work. We both came back, and both of us want to start blabbing about how good the saw ran because it ran good. And he came up with a point. It's about the carburetor. So I want to start with that because the 372's in all the different flavors, and there's a lot of them now. Whether it's stock or tweaked or junk pile like these here, they run well. It's a good design, and one of the testaments to the good design is how many variations you can come up with a 372 bits and pieces and still have a good running saw. With that, that's my monologue.
Oh, that wasn't as long as usual. Well, people want us to be silly, and we're kind of. This is a truncated version of what we had really had planned. It's kind of like the 372 farewell party. For those that don't know, the 372 is about done as far as being on the market here in the U.S. As of today, what's today? The 20th? Yeah.
Yes, the 20th.
Yeah, as of today, they're sold out nationally. There's one more container coming in. I don't know how many are on there. I got this tip at a meeting back in September that they were, going to be short product. And I went back to the store the next day, and there was 40-some up in the Troy warehouse and the Northeast warehouse in New York. And so I grabbed half of those, and somebody else grabbed the other half, and so there's been none available. Now the thing is, A, I don't know how many are coming in on this last container. B, there's a good chance that, the order's already allocated. They could have like 500 coming in and orders for 700, and so they're probably going to be sold before they even get here. Partly because the 572 is just so good. I don't care. It's time to make a change. We love this chassis, and you'll see why in a minute. You've seen one before, but you know what? As far as the market goes, it's been out since '96. The 572 is as close to perfect as you can get, and so I don't really care if we have them to sell. Yeah. So they're going away, and there's a couple other things that are going away. The little bomb that we want to drop here for guys that want the. I forget who the guy was, but one of your subs on a video or two ago pointed out that I think, based on the way he's writing and spelling, he's in Europe somewhere.
Yeah.
And I don't know his name, but he said, hey, he got it from his guy in Europe that the 51.4 millimeter cylinder, OEM cylinder, is going away.
Yeah.
And that seems to be the case too, because what I do, I go in, I kind of game the system, and when you go into the power site for the dealers, you can see how many they got. And if you put in more, like say there's 40 of something in stock, and say you want to buy 60, it'll show 40 available, and then it'll put the other 20 on back order. But when a part's going away and it's already tagged for that, the system will not accept a number bigger than the number that they have in inventory. So that cylinder, for people that think that they got to have it, that's going away before too long too. So anyway, today's a truncated version of what we wanted to do.
Yeah.
Because we kind of got rained out, and we were going to spread all this crap out on the deck like we've done in the past, but the deck is soaking wet right now. And we finished the job, kind of was in a light rain, and in this neighborhood, I don't know if Walt got any of it on the camera, but like there's people been cutting, and
Oh my God.
we've been hearing saws going off in like 3-4 different directions here, and people, everybody's doing that, and it's been a kind of a noisy day here in the neighborhood, which is good. And so I think we probably,
But that's
I'm sure we had the
everything
loudest
here.
saws.
Every
in that
time
man.
every time I've ever come down here, the first thing that strikes me when you get out of the car is someone's cutting wood somewhere. There's a chainsaw. And on a normal day down here, like he was saying, you hear one off to the east, to the west, to the north, to the south. There's at least 4 saws before the afternoon.
This is my house, so I know like who that was, and I know who that other one was. I'm not sure about the guys down there.
You see, you know what the bad part of this is? If you don't know Bob, he'll come down here and he'll say, that's a 372, that's a 346. And you might walk away that he can tell what kind of saw it is by the way it sounds. In fact, he knows the people, he knows what he sold them. So just a little aside there. So anyway.
This stuff is brutal.
Yeah, I know.
This is now a solvent.
It is.
It's like
Like Coca-Cola.
Oh God, I'm
You
switching.
clean your engine block with it.
Switching to the water.
372's. Me too. Where's water? Can I have one of these?
Yeah, it's yours.
So how do we go about this? Because this is a subject. I mean, you can go on for days about 372.
It's kind of an update. And the update is going to encompass, and we're going to do show and tell on the workbench here, I guess, a little bit. But the update kind of encompasses, all right, it's going away in the market, and I'm ready for it to go away in the market because it's 572 time. But, for all the enthusiasts and everybody that watches this stuff that wants to keep them going, what's going to still be available, what, in our opinion, and we're not going to agree on them all, but like what aftermarket parts are probably a good value to keep stuff going cheap, because let's face it, Walt and I are both cheap. And well, part of it, a couple guys have written comments like, "Oh, you guys always seem to run pro saws and stuff like that." But it's key to we run them, but we don't actually pay for them.
No, we don't have to buy
I mean,
them.
we pay for some of the parts, but we build them out of like junk. We're not, every time you see us with a 372 or something, even some of the ones even look clean. It's not like I went, and even paid dealer costs and took one off the shelf. I mean, it's stuff that's been crunched, beat up, run over, blown up, and it's naturally because the pro guys are the ones that do that all the time. They end up being pro saws. And 372s, because they've been so popular for so long, the earliest one I've got, the first year, the 371 cases were 1996 serial number tags. And so that's like 23 years right now in 2019. So and it's popular. The pro guys use them. Pro guys use upsaws. Guy, like if I was just cutting my own wood, I might never wear out a saw. Because I baby it and wipe it off. And I'm kind of a dope with that. But guys, they burn them up. Every couple of years they get another one. They run them over. So the bits and pieces, we talk about junk pile bills, but you never get a bigger junk pile than a 372, just because how many there are.
Well, in that spirit, when we were talking about what to bring up, because Bob has probably one of every iteration of 372 that was ever stamped with a legitimate part number, I brought up junk piles. Because part of what happens and part of what the discussion is okay, now that the official chassis comes to an end, what's next? I mean, there's a lot of follow on with the OEM stuff, but there's also other parts out there. So, I have a blend of stuff, and I think it's maybe atypical because I put it together, but it's not going to be atypical, say 5 years from now, when people start trying to figure out how to bring some of the carcasses back to life. And we've done a few videos on that, so I'm not gonna beat it to death. But I brought them because I think that's part of the 372 existence and experience.
Yeah.
And as Bob was saying, so one of the saws actually the saw I ran today, the reason I brought it is because its origin in my world started right here, when Bob had gotten a load of used up 372's from a logger, and we were kind of like digging through
Tom.
the parts. Oh, this was back in 2014.
Yeah, but the guy's name is Tom. Yeah.
Yeah, and I came home with a couple of bits and pieces, and they sat around for, what, 4 or 5 years, and decided to stick them on the saw that we ran this morning, the junk pile saw, and it was that Madsen hot rodded top end. We're not going to talk about hot rodded top ends, but the point is that what happens with us is he gets a bunch of saws, I'll get a couple of dead saws, and they sort of linger around the shop, and all of a sudden we'll get a hair and decide to go rummage through the pile and put together a saw, of which I've got 3 of them sitting right here. Bob's got a bunch as well. So as he was saying, we're all running pro saws. No, we're not. We're running junk piles that look like pro saws. How's that?
Yeah, we're running stuff that used to be pro saws.
Used to be, yeah, exactly. Past tense.
Brought it back from the dead. Yeah, and none of this is to suggest, you know, that it's going to be hard for people that want to keep the 372s going. I mean, you're going to have an easier time than you've had with any other discontinued item in
Yes.
this saw world environment, because you know it's just going out now. The OEM parts are going to be around for a long time. There's more aftermarket parts support for these things now than there ever was for anything else. And keep in mind, it's still pretty easy to maintain, build, and keep going 272s, which were discontinued like in '97.
But they still make those.
Well, they still make them down in Brazil. The thing is that you can still get, you know, even with aftermarket, it's not a big deal to keep these things going if you need different parts. Here again, there's some big savings on plastic stuff that, you know, really the top cover, you know, like a $15 top cover versus like a $98 top cover.
See, we're gonna argue pretty quick, but
Well, let me finish. Then you can pick on me. But the thing is, it's like, that's what I'm saying. It's like, so you can go back to something that ended 20 years ago and still get mostly what you need to keep them going. Then you don't have to worry about anything for an awful long time. You know, that's just being discontinued next month. And the only exception to that is, you know, we got a soft spot for the red ones.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
A,
That's
the
what- yeah.
aftermarket companies are not and do not embrace the red stuff. And B, even on the OEM side,
He can't even get me a bar cover. This is Johnsford on it. How do you like that?
there might be one laying around here, but
Yeah.
but yeah, so you can't. And on the OEM side, you really that stuff goes away pretty quick. The internal stuff, yeah. But you know, say you need, you know, like a starter cover, you know, chain brake cover, you can still get that stuff. But if you look at what happened again with the 670s, which, you know, the counterpart, the red side of the family with the 272 61 chassis, that stuff has gotten really scarce. And here again, there's no aftermarket, you know, stuff jumping in there to.
So rolling back to this whole thing, it's another thing I'm going to say right now because he's going to come back around it. So I figure might
He's
as well.
dying to start an argument, you know. And
No, this is not an argument. Well, it sort of is. It's interesting that over the last few years, we've sort of almost inverted on what we consider legitimate aftermarket parts for. But I'm not as interested as I once was in the lower end of the cylinders. You know, I'm more interested in either OEM or a better aftermarket than the lower price point side of that stuff. Having said that, the junk pile saw has like a $2 piston in there. That's, you know.
Well, I don't think I disagree with that. We're gonna have to argue about something else because I'm not like big on the aftermarket top ends as far as, you know, they work.
Yeah.
And again, a lot of it has to do with your intended application. Now I got a few of these 372s that I got to build for guys that got to run the hell out of them.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm not going to screw around, you know, with the $14 top ends.
Or cranks. I'm not gonna mess with the cranks.
For guys that are on the hobby side, and a lot of time, I'm kind of lucky that I get to see I play in the hobby sides and I work in the store side. I have managed to keep them separate, but there's two real different worlds there. And you know, for guys on the enthusiast side, you know what, you can buy one of those $15 top ends, and if it works, it could work for a long time, it might not work, but if it doesn't, it's $15 and who cares? You know, I got a kit saw here that Walt gave me as a Christmas present, and I put it together actually over last year around Christmas. And it gave me a chance to, as I was putting it together, to evaluate close look at every part as it went in. And, you know, some of the stuff is like not so good, and some of the stuff is. But if you be able to enjoy this hobby, say there's a big difference between, you know, oh, I need a tank because it's cracked, and you buy a $15 tank instead of a $125 tank. And there's a good tank and a bad tank, and Walt's going to talk all about the bad tank because he's gotten stuck with a couple of them, and they're awful.
They are awful. I have one up here. I hate those things. So all I do is bag on them because I don't like them. And I think I have legitimate reasons not to like them. But it, you know, it reminds me of the discussion about small block Chevy back in the day. There was OEM, and then all of a sudden there was Napa, and then there was all these. What was that company that had the big catalog? Remember that big catalog that had?
What, J.C. Whitney?
J.C. Whitney. So you had all this stuff that you could roll into the 350 Chevy and end up with a running motor. I think the 372's is kind of like that 350 Chevy concept in the saw world, where by definition of the three saws that I have sitting over here, all of them have some OEM and some aftermarket, and they all run, and they all cut wood. And it's the same kind of concept. The only things that I'll point out is I don't like aftermarket cranks. I haven't seen one yet I like. And I don't like some of the top ends. I don't like the ignitions. Global. I have yet to find an ignition system from there that I like.
I disagree with some of that.
See? There's our first.
First of all, I would much rather see the 372 be compared to some kind of a Mopar product than a Chevy.
Oof.
But yeah, that'll offend a lot of guys.
No, but the problem is there's nothing out there with Mopar that's common enough.
But
340, 318s,
I get it.
440s.
Yeah, I mean, it's in my perspective. But almost every opinion I've got comes from the perspective that a totally bone stock 372 is an awful good saw, and it doesn't need a lot of the stuff that we do playing around with them. We do it because it's fun. It's not necessary.
I agree 100%.
And it's just because that's part of the hobby. Because we all like to go in and poke around things, and yeah, and you do. It's nice to see it runs a little bit better than stock. It's not important. And, you know, on the parts, I mean, the two parts that used to scare me the most, I thought would drive people nuts, are the ignitions and the carburetors.
Carburetors, agree.
And I've seen,
I agree.
just what we've all seen, I think, in the last 5 or 6 years, is they've come a long ways in that stuff.
Yeah,
you know,
maybe.
it's because all the people that are buying all these kit saws and the clone saws, you know, the percentage of failures. It used to be that, you know, the ignition, you can almost, especially, you always had the fat coil wires and all those things.
Yeah.
You almost knew like they were like all gonna fail. It's like you know, every light bulb in your house is eventually gonna blow out.
Yeah.
You know, and it was like they were almost all gonna fail. But now, you know, there's an awful lot of them out there. And if you look at the online, you know, threads and silliness there, you know, you'd think of like you'd see a lot more failures. The cranks, I kind of half agree with you on the cranks.
Yeah, I'm not a fan
If
of
it goes, if it's just like, you know, for us playing around here again, we pointed out a million times. If you got your own personal cutting that you do mostly for yourself, and you're splitting it between, you know, a dozen or 2 dozen saws, that crank may not ever fail. But I don't think those cranks are made for prime time. A guy like Matt or, you know, professional. So I'm kind of halfway there on the cranks. And so then that kind of sets the stage here. We're not going out in the rain and spread a bunch of saws out on the deck. The other thing too is you know, take the ignitions or the carburetors, right? And you say, well, they're not that good, all right? And you should avoid it. Now, if they were both the same price, because I think that the current, the 471 coil, which is the non-limited coil, and the new X-torq coil with the different advance curve. And
I like
curve,
those.
they're good, right? But those things are like $85 each. Okay, they're both right around $85 right now.
So what do you keep gambling, spending 15
Well,
bucks,
no,
15
no,
bucks?
well, it's only like $9.
Okay.
All right,
so
but anyway, but the thing, I'm not saying you keep gambling.
Yeah.
If you have one and it fails, you won't buy another one. But if you have one and it doesn't fail, then you've won. You know, and so here again, the price is part of it. Same thing with the carburetors. The carburetors are $80-some too. Now the thing is, if a coil fails, it's going to just fail.
Yeah.
But
I've had
but if a
literally.
carburetor fails,
Yeah.
it doesn't fail all at once,
Yeah.
and it'll drive you batty until you admit that it's no good, and then it's.
But I've even seen that on
Bing,
OEM.
it goes into the
Yeah.
woods. You really got to get rid of it. So the carburetors, yeah, you know what? And part of it is, what did you start with? Well, if you get one of these clone saws, you get a kit saw. You know, obviously you got to start out with the carburetor and the ignition that come with it. If they act up, well, then you can replace it with the real one.
Right.
But in the meantime, I mean, as far as replacing parts that aren't broken yet because they might break, I've never understood that. Thinking,
Yeah.
you know, it's like I'm gonna upgrade it. Well, if it needs to be fixed, fix it. But you know, you can upgrade both of those parts and spend like $170, but maybe you don't need to.
See, now we have our first disagreement.
Well, it's about time.
It's about time. See, I don't buy that at all. If I know statistically that I'm going to have bad luck with ignitions, no, I'm serious, and this is legitimate, and this is how I am.
Yeah, if that is shown statistically, then okay. But
Why would I spend $9 on a 50% chance rather than spend, say, $50 or even $60 and know I'm going to be able to get a lot of work done? The one thing that drives me nuts is to get out there, even when I have 5 saws in the truck, the one I want to run stops. Even though I have plan B, C, D, and E, it still pisses me off that the one I wanted to run stops.
well,
So I would rather spend the money and not have a failure. And for that matter, I'd rather spend the money on the X-torq ignition system because it makes the saw easier to start. I'm not trying to make them rev to the moon,
well, that coil fires at a lower RPM.
but I like them.
Oh yeah, but I'm saying that's why it starts easier.
So-
but what you said about like the coils, I agree with up until you said, you know, statistically 50%. They're not failing at a 50% rate. Where do you get that?
Mine have,
Really?
yes.
No, there'd be
I'll
a lot more chatter on these things if they were all failing at 50.
Well,
One out of every 2 is failing.
He does have a point because I had bought a batch of like 20 of them once. And this was probably back in 2016 maybe, 15, 16.
Yeah, right. They're
And they all failed. Every one of them.
but they're all. From
I
the
went
same,
right through
But
them.
they're all from the same batch. And
Right,
what
I
does-
understand.
And how does the new coils
Well, I haven't
get
had.
painted with that same brush?
Yeah, I haven't. I honestly, you're right. I haven't. The clone saws we got, none of them have failed to this point in time. But I did buy a couple of ignitions from said clone company, and they failed too. So I have a terrible record with buying cheap ignitions online. Having said that, Bob's correct. It could be just I'm cursed, you know, with those coils. And I have to admit that these 3 right here, they haven't stopped. So, yeah. But my whole thing is with my experience set, why would I waste the time? You know what I'm saying? Especially if I can get the OEM, and not only do I have a better chance of it not failing, because that ticks you right off, but the saw is a better running saw, which is a whole nother subject. The same with the carburetor. I'll spend $85 all day long on the saw that I want to run well.
Yeah, but not everybody wants to do that.
Let me see if we're still recording. Make sure we haven't
Okay.
run up. I see the light blinking.
What's that mean?
It means it's still recording. As Bob was pointing out, since we ran out of time on the main camera, that means we were just wasting time. And I was in the middle of a big rant, and the end of the rant goes along these lines, is that to me it's more important to go out and work with my limited time and have the saw run well. And to me the definition of a good running saw is I'm thinking about the job and not working around some little quirk on the saw. So I don't want it to stall, I want it to start easy, I want it to run good, have decent power, you know, set it down, pick it up, hit the throttle, and have it cut right now. That kind of thing is more important to me than an extra split second. But sooner or later, we got to roll this over to 372.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I have to agree with that again.